Hey family, this is day 70 of our Reading Through the Bible Together in a Year series. Today we're covering Judges or Shophatim, chapters 4 through 6. Now remember, the book of Judges is very much about this cycle that happens in the people of Israel's history, where before there was a king, or at least before there was a human king, Israel would be in good standing with God for a short amount of time, but then they would turn away and start worshiping other gods and do terrible things, and they would do evil in the sight of the Lord. And so he would give them up to other nations and let them be conquered, let them be attacked. He'd put them under the oppression of the Amorites or the Philistines. Specifically, the Philistines are a big player in the book of Judges. But that's where we're at, is what we had yesterday. We saw that Israel kept doing what was wrong, and God kept raising up a judge, which is a warrior type leader, to save them out of bondage, because whenever Yahweh would hear their cry of repentance, he would feel for them. He would be sorry about their groanings, and he would want to lift them out of their oppression. And so he would send a judge, a warrior type figure. And so we've already seen two stories about two judges and a third judge, but not really a story about it. We had Othniel, who he just was a warrior and he conquered and it was good. And then we had Ehud, and he's the guy who he craftily assassinated the big fat King Eglon by stabbing him with his left hand, and the fat closed around the knife, and then Ehud escaped, and then they attacked, and it all went well. And so those are the two judges that we've seen so far. And the judges, they're not role models for us, so we shouldn't look at it that way, but we should just see that they're people who are starting to get worse and worse, and God continues to use them to save Israel out of Israel's own undoing of themselves. So as we get into chapters 4 through 6, let's see how that goes today. The children of Israel again did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight when Ehud was dead. Yahweh sold them into the hand of Yavin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose army was Sisera, who lived in Haroshet of the Gentiles. The children of Israel cried to Yahweh, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and he mightily oppressed the children of Israel for 20 years. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidot, judged Israel at that time. She lived under Deborah's palm tree between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and called Barak, the son of Avinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, Hasn't Yahweh, the God of Israel, commanded, Go and lead the way to Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun? I will draw to you to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Yavin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into your hand. Barak said to her, If you will go with me, then I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go. She said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the journey that you take won't be for your honor, for Yahweh will sell Sisera into a woman's hand. Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali together to Kadesh. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah went up with him. Now Hever the Kenite had separated himself from the Kenites, even from the children of Hovav, Moshe's brother-in-law, and had pitched his tent as far as the oak in Zaananim, which is by Kadesh. They told Sisera that Barak the son of Avinoam had gone up to Mount Tabor. Sisera gathered himself all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people who were with him, from Haroshet of the Gentiles to the river Kishon. Deborah said to Barak, Go, for this is the day in which Yahweh has delivered Sisera into your hand. Hasn't Yahweh gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. Yahweh confused Sisera, all his chariots, and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army to Haroshet of the Gentiles, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. There was not a man left. However, Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Yael, the wife of Hever the Kenite, for there was peace between Yavin the king of Hazor and the house of Hever the Kenite. Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, don't be afraid. He came into her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. He said to her, Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. She opened a container of milk and gave him a drink, and covered him. He said to her, Stand in the door of the tent, and if any man comes and inquires of you, and says, Is there any man here? You shall say, No. Then Yael, Hever's wife, took a tent peg, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to him, and struck the pin into his temples, and it pierced through into the ground, for he was in a deep sleep. So he fainted and died. Behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Yael came out to meet him, and said to him, Come, and I will show you the man whom you seek. He came to her, and behold, Sisera lay dead, and the tent peg was in his temples. So God subdued Yavin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel on that day. The hand of the children of Israel prevailed more and more against Yavin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Yavin, the king of Canaan. Then Deborah and Barak, the son of Avinoam, sang on that day, saying, Because the leaders took the lead in Israel, because the people offered themselves willingly, be blessed, Yahweh. Hear, you kings, give ear, you princes. I, even I, will sing to Yahweh. I will sing praise to Yahweh, the God of Israel. Yahweh, when you went out of Seir, when you marched out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled, the sky also dropped. Yes, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked at Yahweh's presence, even Sinai at the presence of Yahweh, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, the son of Anath, in the days of Yael, the highways were unoccupied. The travelers walked through byways. The rulers ceased in Israel. They ceased until I, Deborah, arose, until I arose a mother in Israel. They chose new gods. Then war was in the gates. Was there a shield or spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? My heart is toward the governors of Israel, who offered themselves willingly among the people. Bless Yahweh. Speak, you who ride on white donkeys, you who sit on rich carpets, and you who walk by the way. Far from the noise of archers in the places of drawing water, there they will rehearse Yahweh's righteous acts, the righteous acts of his rule in Israel. Then Yahweh's people went down to the gates. Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song. Arise, Barak, and lead away your captives, you son of Avinoam. Then a remnant of the nobles and the people came down. Yahweh came down for me against the mighty. Those whose root is in Amalek came out of Ephraim after you, Benjamin, among your peoples. Governors come down out of Machir. Those who handle the marshal's staff came out of Zebulun. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah. As was Issachar, so was Barak. They rushed into the valley at his feet. By the watercourses of Reuven there were great resolves of heart. Why did you sit among the sheepfolds, to hear the whistling for the flocks? At the watercourses of Reuven there were great searchings of heart. Gilead lived beyond the Yarden. Why did Dan remain in ships? Asher sat still at the haven of the sea, and lived by his creeks. Zebulun was a people that jeopardized their lives to the death. Naphtali also, on the high places of the field. The kings came and fought. Then the kings of Canaan fought at Ta'anak by the waters of Megiddo. They took no plunder of silver. From the sky the stars fought. From their courses they fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away, that ancient river, the river Kishon. My soul march on with strength. Then the horse hoofs stamped because of the prancing of the strong ones. Curse Meroz, said Yahweh's angel. Curse bitterly its inhabitants, because they didn't come to help Yahweh against the mighty. Yael shall be blessed above women, the wife of Hever the Kenite. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. He asked for water, she gave him milk. She brought him butter in a lordly dish. She put her hand to the tent peg, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. With the hammer she struck Sisera, she struck through his head. Yes, she pierced and struck through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay. At her feet he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. Through the window she looked out and cried. Sisera's mother looked through the lattice. Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why do the wheels of his chariots wait? Her wise ladies answered her. Yes, she returned an answer to herself. Have they not found? Have they not divided the plunder? A lady, 2 ladies to every man. To Sisera a plunder of dyed garments, a plunder of dyed garments embroidered, on both sides, on the necks of the plunderer. So let all your enemies perish, Yahweh, but let those who love him be as the sun when it rises in its strength. Then the land had rest 40 years. The children of Israel did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, so Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. The hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of Midian, the children of Israel made themselves the dens which are in the mountains, the caves, and the strongholds. So it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the children of the east came up against them. They encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth until you come to Gaza. They left no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep, ox, or donkey, for they came up with their livestock and their tents. They came in as locusts for multitude. Both they and their camels were without number, and they came into the land to destroy it. Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the children of Israel cried to Yahweh. When the children of Israel cried to Yahweh because of Midian, Yahweh sent a prophet to the children of Israel, and he said to them, Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you out of the house of bondage. I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out from before you, and gave you their land. I said to you, I am Yahweh your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But you have not listened to my voice. Yahweh's angel came and sat under the oak which is in Ophrah, that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite. His son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Yahweh's angel appeared to him and said to him, Yahweh is with you, you mighty man of valor. Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if Yahweh is with us, why then has all this happened to us? Where are all his wondrous works which our fathers told us of, saying, Didn't Yahweh bring us up from Egypt? But now Yahweh has cast us off and delivered us into the hand of Midian. Yahweh looked at him and said, Go in this, your might, and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Haven't I sent you? He said to him, O Lord, how shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is the poorest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Yahweh said to him, Surely I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. He said to him, If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that it is you who talk with me. Please don't go away until I come to you and bring out my present and lay it before you. He said, I will wait until you come back. Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes of an ephah of meal. He put the meat in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out to him under the oak, and presented it. The angel of God said to him, Take the meat and the unleavened cakes, and lay them on this rock, and pour out the broth. He did so. Then Yahweh's angel stretched out the end of his staff that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and fire went up out of the rock, and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. Then Yahweh's angel departed out of his sight. Gideon saw that he was Yahweh's angel, and Gideon said, Alas, Lord Yahweh, because I have seen Yahweh's angel face to face. Yahweh said to him, Peace be to you, don't be afraid, you shall not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to Yahweh, and called it, Yahweh is Peace. To this day it is still in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. That same night Yahweh said to him, Take your father's bull, even the second bull 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is by it. Then build an altar to Yahweh your God on the top of this stronghold in an orderly way, and take the second bull, and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah which you shall cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as Yahweh had spoken to him. Because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, he could not do it by day, but he did it by night. When the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah was cut down that was by it, and the second bull was offered on the altar that was built. They said to one another, Who has done this thing? When they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, Bring out your son that he may die, because he has broken down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the Asherah that was by it. Joash said to all who stood against him, Will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? He who will contend for him, let him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because someone has broken down his altar. Therefore on that day he named him Yerub-Baal, saying, Let Baal contend against him, because he has broken down his altar. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of the east assembled themselves together, and they passed over and encamped in the valley of Yezreel. But Yahweh's spirit came on Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Aviezer was gathered together to follow him. He sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, and they also were gathered together to follow him. He sent messengers to Asher, to Zebulun, and to Naphtali, and they came up to meet them. Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have spoken, behold, I will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I'll know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have spoken." It was so. For he rose up early on the next day, and pressed the fleece together, and wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Gideon said to God, "Don't let your anger be kindled against me, and I will speak but this once. Please let me make a trial just this once with the fleece. Let it now be dry only on the fleece, and on all the ground let there be dew." God did so that night, for it was dry on the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. So a couple cool stories today, kind of graphic here and there. I mean, definitely Yael and driving the tent peg through the head of Sisera in her tent. Like, that's just crazy graphic. But, this story is elevating her as being Israel's savior. And we're introduced to this judge, Deborah. And it's cool because Deborah is labeled as a prophetess, and this is the second prophetess that we've seen so far, at least that I can account. We have Miriam, Moses' sister. She's a prophetess, and then Deborah is also a prophetess. And what is a prophet? It's one who speaks on behalf of God, just like Moses, just like Isaiah, Jeremiah, all these prophets. Deborah is a prophetess, and Miriam is a prophetess too. So that's cool in itself. But then we get into this story about Gideon, and we're not done with Gideon's story yet, but what we've seen so far today is that he wonders why God is not saving Israel and why he's not doing his big wonders from Egypt. But like the angel of Yahweh has shown up and just started talking to Gideon and been like, "Well, I'm sending you now. This you're going to be the savior." And then Gideon's like, "Not me. I'm the lowest of the low." And he's a little bit of a coward, but he keeps putting these things out in front of God and saying, "If this really is you, God, then do this. And if you do that, then I'll know that it's you, and I will follow behind you." And we shouldn't totally throw that in his face as being unfaithful. I mean, he really does want some sort of evidence. Just like if we want to throw it forward to the Jesus story, when Jesus shows up after he's resurrected, and he shows up to the room of his disciples, and they all have believed, but Thomas, he didn't believe because he hadn't seen it for himself. And he shows up, and Jesus is like, "Put your hand in my wound and in my side, and like know that it's me." And it's at that moment. I mean, Thomas doesn't actually go through with that and touch him, but because he sees him, then he knows that it's him. And so I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but just we shouldn't necessarily rat on Gideon just because he wanted some sort of evidence or proof, right? Especially if we know that the angel of Yahweh, or God who shows up in the flesh type situation multiple times in the story, they don't recognize that it's actually a deity. They just kind of see it as a man until they realize who it is. And it's because our idea of what an angel is this big glowy thing wearing a dress with wings. But like the angel in the Old Testament looks like a dude, looks like a man, looks like a person, a human being. So interesting stuff. Let's see tomorrow how the story of Gideon plans out. But as for today, I hope you have a wonderful day.